tricks was you kind of fool your mind. So like say you're doing a long run, and you're running up and down the sand dunes, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna run this up to the top of this, and then I'm gonna quit. And when you get up to the top of it, you know, do an assessment. Well, I feel all right now. I can do another one. And then you run up, okay, I'll do another one, then I'm gonna quit. And then you just kind of keep tricking yourself, basically. And it's more about being present.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Casazza, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with a SEAL. And today's guest is a retired Navy SEAL. He served our country for 20 years. He served in SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 2 and did 2 combat deployments. I'm really excited to talk to him because he is the one guest I know nothing about. So this should be a really, really fun episode. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to the show, Kenny Hill. Kenny, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you because I couldn't really find you online. I couldn't find anything about you. So I wanna dive into who you are. What made you go into the SEALs? Was there something in childhood that made you want to go special force route? What made you pick this route?
Well, first I'd like to say thanks for having me on the show, and I'm glad you can't find anything about me. That means I've been doing my homework, doing everything right. What made me want to be a SEAL? Well, it started a long time ago. I was in a current events class in middle school, and it was during the Iran hostage situation, and the way they were talking about the guys are going to come in, fast rope on the building, go down, clear the rooms. It just seemed exciting, and so from that point on, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, some sort of special forces. And I just kept that dream all the way through high school. And then when I got in the Navy, I kept it. I had some setbacks along the way. Whenever I got in the Navy, I failed the psyche eval. And so originally I was supposed to go, I was in what they call the dive fair program. So my path was to go to boot camp and then go straight to buds. And then if I dropped out of buds, I'd go be like a Navy diver or something else that was diving related. But when I was in boot camp, I failed the psyche eval, like I said. And so they sent me back, said I had to prove that I wasn't suicidal for 6 months. And so in the Navy, if you go to a command, you're there for at least 3 years. So I was stuck on a ship for 3 years waiting to go to buds the whole time. Not even knowing I was going to get a chance, but I wanted it so bad that I trained every day and just kept that dream alive until I finally got to buds.
You said in high school, you decided like I want to go into special forces. Were you training at all to get ready for that, like physically or mentally? Like, did you know what you were going to get into?
I heard the horror stories. I was really kind of amazed that anybody could stay awake for 5 days. That just blew my mind because usually if I did like a all nighter, I was dead the next day. And so I was really looking forward to that challenge. That was really kind of motivating. I was kind of like a star-eyed kid, had this dream of being a SEAL and how cool it was going to be and everything, and really didn't know what I was getting into. My training consists of running. I did maybe 2 or 3 miles. I never really ran a whole lot because I didn't really know what I was getting into. But I knew that, if once given the chance, that I just wasn't going to quit. And so, in a way, getting kicked out of the program early in boot camp was a blessing because then I got to go, into the fleet and meet some people who had been to buds and kind of get an idea more of what it was going to take. And that's when I really upped my training, upped my swimming. Like I knew how to swim, but I was not a competent swimmer. And those 3 years, I swam all the time until I was ready, basically.
You mentioned you just knew you weren't going to quit. You were never going to quit. So where did that come from? Was it something that was instilled in you in childhood? Where did that mindset of I'm never going to quit come from?
You want something bad enough that's just all you want. And so, you just make a decision in your mind that I'm going to do this or die. That's basically what my mentality was. I'm either going to make it, or I'm gonna either get hurt, and if I get hurt, I'm gonna keep going until they tell me I can't, or I'll pass out or die. So that was just kind of that's how bad I wanted it, I guess.
So knowing that you wanted it so bad and then failing the psych evaluation, what was going on in your mind at that time?
During the evaluation, you said,
When you found out like that you couldn't continue because you failed and then you had to go to
uh,
sleep. Yeah.
that that crushed me. Yeah, it was like the first or second week in boot camp, and it just completely demolished me because like they made it sound like I was never gonna, have a chance, and it was just it. I don't know. I just had to pick myself up and just keep the dream alive, and just go with that little tiny chance that I was still gonna go. It was just a refusal to give up no matter what.
And knowing that you had that small little chance in that window, what was it like for you? Like, well, for it took 3 years. So like throughout it, how did you keep that little fire burning in you that like, that you're going to get this opportunity, that you're going to be able to go and not be like, my shot is never coming, especially living in a world today where like everything is so instant and, we can't like 3 years seems so quick, but yet it feels like when you're in it, like you're never going to get there. So what was that like for you to keep that dream alive and keep going?
I mean, it was difficult, because you have a lot of naysayers. You're never gonna make it, and just you just you just had to believe in yourself and know. For me, it was just a matter of really wanting it and not gonna give up until I was dead, or they said no, you cannot do it, and then I didn't have any backup plan, but I just knew that just give me my shot, and that's all I needed, and it's just resilience, I guess, built through childhood that I just was not going to give up.
When you got your orders to go to Buds, how did that feel? How that mentally feel for you and were you ready for it? Were you like, give me everything you got?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I was ready for it, and then when I got to Buds, I realized I was okay.
Did you have a lot of doubt that creeped in because you waited 3 years for this moment? Then this moment finally comes, right? And it's the hardest training in the world, right? And it's like, did you ever have any doubts throughout it? Were you ever like, I should have trained harder? I should have or any moments of confusion for yourself?
Oh, I definitely had. I mean, there's always doubt. Like the things that go through my head all the time are just some doubt, and sometimes just inappropriate things that. But I just have to separate it and know that that's not my true belief. That's not really me. That's just what's going on in my head. And just kind of quiet those voices. I noticed like right away when I got the Buds that I had no soft sand running skills or experience. And I don't know if you ever ran in soft sand, but it's completely different than running on hard pack. And you might be a fast runner on regular road or turf, but soft sand just completely slows you down. And I realized right away that this is gonna be tough. And I wasn't as prepared, I guess, as I thought I was. But I knew again that I'm just gonna give it my all, and just let the cards fall where they may.
How was Hell Week for you? Since we talked about like how you're like, I struggle with a one nighter like the next day. How was it for you?
When I was in Buds, we were all wearing the greens, not like the camouflage, but like the greens, and you had a white T-shirt. And when you went through Hell Week and you got through it, you got to wear a brown T-shirt, and so that signified who had already gone through Hell Week. And we used to look at the guys in the brown T-shirts like they had the secret to life, and it's just, when our chance finally came, I mean, it was definitely tough, but again, it was more of just, resiliency. There's some autopilot stuff, especially like probably Wednesday when you're so tired, you're just kind of just going about going through it. A lot. One of the things that we learned was basically you work from meal to meal or evolution to evolution. So like in buds, if something happened, like everything we did was an evolution. Like when we went to do the surf zone where they do surf torture, you just lay in the water and the waves just kind of wash over you and you just lay there for however long the instructors want you to lay. That was an evolution. Going to the O course, that was an evolution. So you basically go through one evolution after another. One of the tricks was you kind of fool your mind. So like say you're doing a long run and you're running up and down the sand dunes and you're like, okay, I'm gonna run this up to the top of this and then I'm gonna quit. Then when you get up to the top of it, you do an assessment. Well, I feel all right now. I can do another one. And then you run up, okay, I'll do another one, then I'm gonna quit. And then you just kind of keep tricking yourself, basically. And it's more about being present. Because when you think about, oh my gosh, I've got, this is only day one. I got 4 more days of this. I can't make it, blah, blah, blah. That's when people quit. Um, or when they're really cold, and they're like, I can't do this anymore. Because they're not really being present. Their mind's in the future. And I think the biggest problem or the biggest idea or the best way to handle it is to be present and assess, okay, exactly, this is how I'm feeling right now. Can I go on? And most of the time, the answer is always yes.
What were some hard, really challenging moments? Did you not have any where like you were like, could have been, I don't know if there was an injury or like where you were close to maybe not making it through? Was there ever anything like that?
Yeah, for me, there was several occasions. I got knocked out, hit with a paddle. We were doing surf passage, and a lot of times when you got like 6 to 8 guys in a boat, and they all have these wooden paddles, and when a wave comes and picks the whole boat up, throws it over, paddles and things go everywhere, and I got hit in the head with a paddle, and it knocked me out temporarily. So they brought me onto the shore, and the doc is basically looking in my eyes and checking to see if I'm okay. And, my mind's just like racing, like, oh, this is the end. This is, they're going to kick me out or whatever. And it's again, not panicking and staying present. You know, I think that's the biggest hurdle most people have in buds and any really hard issue is not staying present and thinking about the future and not a good future, but like, the worst case scenario future.
Who taught you to, or how did you pick up the whole, I need to stay present. I need to not, be in the future.
I think maybe one of the instructors had talked about, doing the I'm gonna quit method, or let me just make it to, the next meal or whatever. Um, but I think maybe just childhood stuff is how I learned to just kind of stay present.
And what was your childhood like?
I had an interesting childhood. I was actually raised in a cult, and it was a subject of a documentary, not too like in 2014. My mom was abused by them, and my dad he uh, he stayed in it, and so he was really strict, and it was kind of like it was a Christian cult, but they're really strict about spare the rod, spoil the child. So my dad was really abusive when it came to that, and so I think a lot of times um, in my early childhood, I kind of became resilient and like almost like a duck with just water off, just rolling off my back, and so I think that's maybe where I learned a lot, this don't quit attitude and just kind of stay present where you're at and not really think about the future.
At what point did you get out? Was that when you enlisted?
No, I was back and forth with my mom and my dad, and so I kind of got out of the like finally out of the cult in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I went to live with my dad a couple times, and then I just get tired of it, and so I end up going back with my mom, and and then of course, and that's whenever in high school, I was having the effects, dealing with the effects of my childhood, and so I spent time in a rehab, and then that's where I learned a lot of mind control
Mm-hmm.
and just really being able to calm the mind and calm my thoughts.
Did you feel like that really helped you and what you learned from that to get through what buds?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Just just taking responsibility for my actions. That's what I definitely learned, and and knowing that I was the source of my successes and my failures, nobody else, and so that really that really helped because there was no one to blame, and so I either had to step up or step down, and I chose to step up because it was always my decision, and I couldn't blame anybody else for it.
One of the guests on this show that I talked to had an abusive childhood as well that he talked about. And when he was going through special forces, he mentioned like I just knew like throughout it, and I said like no matter what they do to me, it's not going to be as bad as what I went through, which helped me to um, just keep going. Did you ever have that feeling as well?
Never really compared it. Uh, to me, it was kind of different. I mean, there was the whole discipline thing that was similar, but as far as like the abuse goes, there was no real like physical abuse in Buds.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it was all more mental. Like Buds is people have always said the Buds is 90% mental and 10% physical, and whatever you tell your body to do, it will do it. It's your mind that quits before your body does. So everything that we did in Buds was just mental, and I never really made a comparison as far as my childhood.
Today's podcast episode is brought to you by my absolute favorite company. If you know me or seen videos or photos of me, then you know I always have one on my wrist. I absolutely adore this company. DiscoverOmnia.com. DiscoverOmnia.com is the world's first smart crystal bracelet. Every single bracelet is handmade in the USA using real genuine crystals made on memory wire. Every bracelet is unisex and they're also aromatherapy. The cool part is the black onyx charm that is on the bracelet. It scans to your cell phone, connecting you to their Wellness Hub Elevate. You can also access their Wellness Hub Elevate on your computer or tablet. You just have to sign into your account. The bracelet gives you a 12-month membership. It has over 200 pieces of self-care content from motivational tips, meditations, breathing exercises, exercises around the theme of your bracelet, printable journals, and so much more. The content is ever growing. And that's not all. The bracelet also gives you lifetime access to their Elevate Together Club, which meets monthly via Zoom. Each month is themed, giving you actionable takeaways to elevate your life. And with this podcast episode, you get 40% off your purchase order by using the code Mindset Podcast. Use that code Mindset Podcast for 40% off. Just go to discoveromnia.com. Discoveromnia.com, code Mindset Podcast for 40% off. Get your bracelet today. How did you prepare the mind then to get through it? Was it through that rehab? Was it through the fleet? Was it through like how did you get that mindset ready and trained for never quitting?
I think it was a combination of everything. Like through the rehab, I learned how to calm the mind and quiet those voices that I was talking about earlier. And then through the going to the fleet, I learned the physical aspect of pushing my body and just continue training, building it up. And then Buds was kind of like the ultimate test.
Was it there anything like That was more physically that you couldn't, like, that you were struggling to do that almost took you out of the game.
Yeah, there's an evolution that you have to pass. It's called life saving. So basically, you're learning to be a lifeguard. And for me, it was a one-on-one wrestling match with the instructors. So when you come up to him, you're supposed to get a cross chest carry, and then you swim them back to the side. But if they feel like they're going to get loose, or push them underwater, then they start fighting you and trying to drown you, and so then you have to get them back in control. And I struggled with that all the way um, to like my second or last try, trying to get them. It's scary, I guess, whenever, again, when your dream is in your control and you're watching it slip through your fingers. And so that's when you kind of, I had to just kind of like really focus, and again, like throw out all the voices, and silence the mind, and just get down to the task of completing it. I mean, I had several of those. I failed my dive physics the first time, and I think you only get two times for that. So, there's several times that my head was on the chopping block, and every time it's just a matter of basically, getting locked on, and really deciding, okay, this is what I want to do. So why am I, you know, not say goofing off, but I need to put 100% towards it. I guess you just kind of lose a little bit of focus sometimes.
Well, when your head's like on the chopping block, like I don't, for me, like it's especially when you want something so bad. Sometimes it's hard to just people are like just let go and surrender and just be present in it, because the mind is just, the pressure that is going on in those thoughts, on like, this is it, you have to get all that pressure. So what are some like things, like actionable takeaways, like that people can learn in terms of what you did to release that pressure and quiet that mind? Because one thing to say, you just quiet the mind.
Breathing.
Okay.
I honestly, I think that's the key to science in the mind, is that to breathe. Um, for me, you just take some deep. I think they call it box breathing, where
Mm-hmm.
you're going to take a deep breath, hold it for 4 seconds as you inhale, hold it 4 seconds, exhale 4 seconds, and then rest 4 seconds. Just keep doing cycling. Sometimes I'll feel like the world's starting to spin, and maybe even start to get tunnel vision. And so then, like, I recognize that right now, and I'll just, and then just think calm thoughts. If the thoughts are flooding my head, just take another breath, kind of push them out, and just really focus on the task at hand.
How are you breathing in when someone is almost drowning you in the pool when you also are holding your breath?
Um, well, usually in like when you're in the middle of the action,
Yeah.
your training kind of takes over. Um, you're almost forced to focus on what's going on. If you're in the middle of the action, it's usually right before it that that's whenever you start. I guess it's kind of like jumping out of a plane. While you're riding, taxiing up on the runway, and you're getting up to altitude, you might have the butterflies in your stomach, and you're obviously not present because you're thinking about the future of, are you going to be flat, splattered on the ground, or are you going to land safely? So I think it's more about the the beforehand stuff, that you need to breathe and get calm, because then whenever you're in the situation, either your adrenaline is going to take over, or your training is going to take over, or both. And so you're going to react like you've been trained, and that's usually what happens. First thing when you jump out of the airplane is that all the anxiety goes away, and you're just falling, and it's exhilarating, and your training kicks in, and you do what you need to do to land safely.
Did you ever have when you were in combat now, where something happened that, I mean, like you just mentioned, you're doing your breathing before the action, right? But what if the action comes without you knowing? Like it just something happened, not aware, action happened. Did that ever happen to you in combat, and then you just had to like kick it into gear? There was no thinking, there was no time to be, breathing, to prep for what just happened.
Right. When that happens, like I said, your adrenaline kicks in, your training takes over, and it's almost like you're on autopilot until you get a break. And then as soon as you get a break, then you can either test, you see, are you still thinking? Are you in the future? Are you what where are you at? And that's whenever you have a chance to actually, do some of the voices in your mind. But in the middle of the situation, your training takes over. You're just like on autopilot,
You
or at
mentioned
least I've been that.
you mentioned like after, then you can assess, right? And then you mentioned a lot of times like shifting into the present moment, like when you're in the future. To me, it sounds like you're very self-aware. And did you at one point in your life did you become so self-aware, and you learn that you needed to be self-aware to get through all this stuff?
Yeah, I think definitely, the SEAL training helped me become self-aware. Uh, like the rehab, helped at it too. Um, I would say it was probably more the SEAL training was where I learned more, self-awareness.
What lessons did you learn throughout SEAL training that was kind of like aha moments for you?
I think the one of the biggest lessons I learned was actually after SEAL training, and it was in SEER training, and we were basically treated like hostages, and I had done something really. When I think about it now, it's really stupid, but we had to sign this paper, saying that we were a prisoner, we were caught, blah blah blah, and so I just, okay, sure, and didn't really realize the effects of it. But they made it look like I was signing papers saying that I had, blown up a building and all this other stuff, and they made it seem like I just easily gave that information over. And so I went back to my little cell, feeling like the lowest piece of dung on the earth, and really beat myself up for it. And this is after, 2 or 3 days of no sleep and hardly any food. So I'm already mentally kind of out there. And I was just feeling like the lowest I've probably ever felt in my life. And it was just a training evolution, it wasn't even real life. And one of the cadre basically kind of saw that, my disposition had changed, and explained to me that, you know, I have the option to change who I am at any moment, and I don't have to be that person that I was yesterday. Giving up all this information to let that go, and you know, be who I want to be today. And that kind of stuck with me. Is like, you don't have to be the person. You don't have to beat yourself up for mistakes you made. Yesterday, years from now, or years ago. You can choose, to change and be who you want to be immediately. And so I think that's what stuck with me the most. If you make a mistake, okay, you made a mistake, learn from it. And if you learn from it, it's not a mistake. If you do it twice, then it is a mistake because you didn't learn from it. That's kind of a motto I've gone after. But that's really what probably stuck with me the most, is that you don't have to be, the person you were yesterday or a few moments ago, or whatever. You can always change immediately.
After getting that advice and letting it sink in, how long did it take you to like make that change? Because I always feel like it's one thing to get the advice, it's another thing for it to sink in and for you to take action on it.
Probably from the walk from whenever I talked to the cadre back to my cell.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went back to my cell. We were supposed to do like these weird, uncomfortable positions, and And I just went back with renewed energy of like, I'm going to kick this in the butt, and I'm going to, I need to stop feeling sorry for myself. And I made that decision. So it sunk in pretty quick.
The seer always interests me, that training part. You have any stories, any cool stories or anything from your sort of training?
uh, no, I don't know.
Did you
Probably not
know what
appropriate.
you were getting into? Like in terms of like, it's one thing to talk about, the one thing that I don't really mention too much on this is like all the different, like you mentioned, evolutions and all the different trainings. You got the diving, you got the swim, you got, the buds part, the first part, and seer part. Did you know what you were going into when you were going into all these different phases? Like, did you know about seer?
Yeah, I knew about Sear. I went through the pilot. This was before 9/11, so it wasn't basically only pilots went through Sear, and maybe like risk people that probably were going to be in combat. Um, so it was up in Maine, and for me it ended up being cold weather training because when we were out there we were in snowshoes and tracking through 2 or 3 feet of snow, so it was super cold. Um, I wasn't expecting, I guess, that part of it. I should have known better. That was in Maine, so and I think it was in January, so it was late.
Now, did you have to, were you outside, like sleeping outside and stuff in the cold? Like how do you prep for something like that to get through the night? I mean, I remember when I did the civilian one, it was just a night and it was like, oh, it was freezing. It was like, I think it was like 37 degrees and I'm just like absolutely frozen. And I don't know how you're doing it in snow. That's how you prep for that. How do you get through it?
I don't know. I mean, it was survival. So we learned beforehand, how to make snow caves, and
Gotcha.
I think we ended up sleeping underneath the bough of a tree. So yeah, everything we did was we were outside for 2 days, and then we got captured, and then you get thrown in a warm prison cell, so that was kind of nice. But it was kind of like you looking forward to it. It was you learn all this stuff, and then you get to test it, and so it was. I don't know if you really needed to prep for it, especially I think just from the background that as a SEAL is like you're just kind of expected to go through it and tough it out if you have to. So there wasn't any like real mental like this is gonna suck. I guess
Yeah.
not eating part was gonna suck. No real prep that I can really remember.
I guess that I forget that they train you. They don't just like throw you in like into the woods to, not knowing any. I forget that part. This for me, like I overthink a lot. I mentioned that a lot on the show. And I kind of get myself into that worst case, like my God, this is gonna be the worst thing. And then my mind kind of takes over. And then when you're there, you're like, oh, that was it, but at the same time, as I'm going through it, like you mentioned, like when you're not present and you're in the future, you're thinking of the what ifs and oh my God, the kidnapping is coming and oh my God, I'm going to be freezing and oh, they're going to put me in these stress positions and I'm not going to be eating. And I'm thinking all that when all I got to be like is, but right now I'm fine, and taking myself back to that present moment. What other things did you learn throughout, whether it's combat, whether it's training and all that? Like I said, it's one thing for you to say quiet your mind, but it's another thing for you to be like, oh yeah, that's what that means. That's what I'm supposed to do there. Like, did you have any moments of learning those of lessons that you learned or were like, oh,
We call them risk assessments. So anytime you do an evolution, you have to fill out a risk assessment. And I kind of took from that basically a risk assessment is, you know, what is the evolution? And then what is the absolute worst case scenario? And for example, jumping out of a plane, the absolute worst case scenario is that, you go splat. So the risk assessment would then take it and say, okay, so what is probability of going splat? And then, it might be like 50%. All right. So then you would say, okay, how can I mitigate, you know, that from happening? Well, make sure you have a parachute. You know, make sure that you've had the proper training and everything. So we basically do a risk assessment, and then you do mitigation of how can we prevent it from happening, and then you go back and you say, okay, now what is the probability of going splat? And it might have went from 50% to now like maybe 10% because of all these things you did. And so in life now, if when my mind starts racing, I'll take a few deep breaths, and then I'll start thinking, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? Okay, now how can I reduce the chance, the probability of that happening? And some of it is, prep beforehand, and then some of it is, what can I do now? And I use that a lot just in everyday life. And generally, when I start thinking, anxiety starts building up, I start thinking, okay, well, what is the worst that can happen? All right, maybe like say going on a podcast, right? The worst thing that can happen is I'll say something and make a fool of myself. Okay, well, how can I prep that? Well, if I don't really know what's going on, I can't. And so I think about it, well, okay, so what, I make a fool of myself, and then can you come back from that? Sure, you can. You just, more experience maybe next time, or, you know, more prep, whatever. But I'm not going to die. And so that's what it kind of comes down to is, well, I'm not going to die, or I'm not going to be, permanently um, disabled or something that I guess I consider a worst case scenario. And so that kind of helps mitigate a lot of stress or anxiety that I would have.
Was there any moments, whether it was in combat, whether it was in training, where you look back on now and like, oh my God, like I can't believe that happened and I made it out. I made it through.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's, a lot of like close calls. Most of them, most of it's always, in some sort of training evolution where it's just, we always had a rule of threes. So like if, three things go wrong, then we're probably going to cancel the evolution just because when you look back on accidents, it wasn't just one single thing. It's always, several things that added up to it. And so um, it's just a matter of basically recognizing that things are on the wrong track, and then just kind of maybe postponing and
You got
reassessing.
any stories for like for example, any stories from that?
Not really of any of the rule of threes. I mean, there's just like I was climbing a mountain and grabbed a rock that I thought was a stable rock, and the whole thing just slid out like a drawer. And I didn't have any pro or anything like that. It was just free climbing, and it was just like, that you just look down as the rock falls. I mean, it was a huge. It was probably like 2 foot by 3 foot slab that just slid right out of the mountain, and it's just like that could have been me. And so some of me wants to thank some God or something. I kind of stray away from that since from my upbringing, but
Mhm.
those moments kind of make you wonder, like,
Yeah,
why am I still here?
yeah. What do you have for what did you learn throughout your time as a SEAL helped that helps you in everyday life?
Well, definitely, not quitting. I still didn't really learn that. I already kind of knew that, but just being more aware of my surroundings and more alert to what's going on around you. I think a lot of accidents can be prevented if you just have more awareness and a lot of I guess pre-thought, like seeing the bigger picture of
Mhm.
what's going to happen. Like the after effects, I guess, of your actions or whatever, and prevention more than trying to fix things afterwards.
Being that this podcast is called Mindset Lessons from the Field, what do you have for us listeners that we can improve our mindset, build up our resiliency, build up that grit for just everyday civilians?
Well, I guess you really need to have something to focus on. Like a lot of people, say in buds, you got to want it. And the people that don't want it, they find out sure, quick enough, and so they're out. And so if you're just trying to, build your mindset, you have to have a goal. It's really hard to try to build something if you don't even know what you're building. And then once you have your goal, you know, it's got to mean something that you're willing to sacrifice for, and be willing to sacrifice for it.
Got it. Yeah. Have a goal, see it through. How does one, um, I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. How does one keep on going, and pushing through that goal when things get really, really challenging and tough and you're on the break of quitting? And I understand it's seeing that goal and wanting it so bad. But is there anything else in terms of having a goal and seeing it through to bust through those rough, challenging, hard times that you can't see coming?
One, you have to have faith that you're going to achieve it. You have to believe in yourself, and again, take responsibility for your actions and in this attainment of it. Don't blame it on other people, and don't leave it up to others to see that you make it, because then I mean, you're probably going to fail. And then when those setbacks come, if you remain focused on it, then have belief that you're going to attain it no matter what. Even if you burn the ships or whatever, you're going to take it, or you're going to get it, or you're going to die trying. And you just have to have that mental fortitude and dedication to what you're doing. If it means you have to put in the extra hours, you have to put in the extra work or whatever, that's what you got to do. And know along the way that you're going to fail several times. Not in the total attainment of your goal, but in some of the methods that you go about trying to achieve it, they might not work, and they're probably not going to work all the time. So you just got to keep figuring something else out. I guess that going back to the other question you said, one thing I did learn in the teams was how to switch gears quickly and accommodate for the situation, because nothing ever ends up like you plan it. And so immediately, as soon as you start working it, you're like, oh, this is not what we planned on. And now we're going to have to accommodate. We're going to have to switch gears, and we're going to have to figure out another way. And in life, the same thing. Whenever, you get thrown a curveball, you're just going to have to accommodate and change your swing and do something to attain your goal, despite everything else that happens.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you. I'm glad I came in knowing nothing about you, because I learned a lot, and it was you said some really great things. And one of the things that you said and all that too was the dedication, having that dedication to get up and still fight for that goal, still work towards it in a way. And that was really inspiring. And I appreciate you being on this show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's your first podcast, right?
Second.
Okay.
I just did one like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. So getting into it. How is it?
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, I think you did a great job, and I thank you again for being here. Thanks for everyone that's listening. Please go like, share, comment, subscribe now. Become a Patreon member to get full access to our bonus episode and extra goodies that only our Patreons get. And please tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you.